Struck him out.
2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk him off. Chris Taylor.
Hi, everyone, and welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Matthew Moreno. Joining me tonight, Anthony Witrado. A little bit of a Labor Day special episode, if you will. As you can tell, I'm not in my usual setup, so if I have the microphone kind of placed off to the side so that it's not fully blocking the screen. But guys, if I see, we have a great chat going already. If my sound is off for whatever reason, please let me know and I'll sort of adjust. But Anthony, how has your Labor Day been?
It's been nice. Played a little golf, watched a little Dodgers, got out of here with a series win in a 4-game series. That's always a big deal. And suddenly the Diamondbacks don't look so threatening.
Yeah, you said it. You've been out ahead of this, well before we got to this point, this series, even September. You were predicting that the Dodgers were going to win the division by at least 5 games. You mentioned it. The Diamondbacks now all of a sudden are in 3rd place, so they are 6 games back. The Padres currently in 2nd place, 5 games back. Big series. Get into everything just right off the bat. Thank you. Reminder to everybody who's joining us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. We appreciate you all. If you are on YouTube, please remember to subscribe, hit the like button, all that good stuff. But Anthony, heading into this kind of wraparound series, obviously the Dodgers lead in the NL West had been trimmed into pretty closely. Dodgers, I think heading into it, I thought maybe a split was probably realistic. But then once you win the first 2 games, I think your calculations and expectations sort of change.
For sure.
Sunday's game, Jeff, fortunately, that was one that Jeff and Blake got to take care of on the live show with everybody. You and I jumped back into things with another win. Not only did the Dodgers create some distance between themselves and the Diamondbacks, but they won the season series, have the tiebreaker in case that becomes a factor at some point. I'll ask you this again. We've discussed this, heading into the weekend. Is the NL West race over? Is it just now a matter of the Dodgers and Padres, or do you see the Diamondbacks maybe climbing back into things a little bit?
I think that this is probably a situation where this is going to help bring them back down to earth, I think, from playing like 750 ball or whatever it was that they were playing for a while there. I think the Dodgers can't let their foot off the gas. They still have to go out and play this thing through. But I think the threats are less imminent now. The Padres have started to sort of come back a little bit also, I think. So I think of these 3 teams, the team most capable and most equipped to continue a run is the Dodgers. They have the best roster top to bottom. And if they can get the pitching healthy, they suddenly look very, very, tough to beat by anybody in any league. And so I think that when they get to that point and we start to really see this roster realized, hopefully just in time for the playoffs, I think that San Diego and Arizona both are probably they're playing to clinch wild cards.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And you bring up a great point, in terms of health, and that's obviously been an issue for the Dodgers all season long, and it still is, even with taking 3 of 4 at Chase Field. Clayton Kershaw, we did our live show that night. He left Friday's start with left big toe inflammation or left big toe pain that then became a bone spur that he apparently has been dealing with off and on for multiple years. And so he's since gone on to the injured list. The good news is, Yamamoto, all signs continue. The arrow's definitely pointing upward for him. He's been throwing bullpen sessions. He obviously made his first rehab start last week. He has another one coming up this week. My guess, and I'm sure, I think we agreed on this, is that's probably going to be the Dodgers left it open-ended. Maybe he makes a 3rd start down in the minors. I think especially given Kershaw's injury, and even before that, assuming he, stretches out to the 3 innings in that start, that he would then be back with the Dodgers. And to your point, getting him back, I think will be key, because then all of a sudden that's, one starter that you can then, at least in theory, count on every single time. It brings a little bit more stability. I think Landon Knack is probably going to factor into the rotation moving forward. The timing of Kershaw's injury and Robleski needing to start on Sunday, which, that went how it went. I don't know if we'll see. I think Robleski's spot, if you will, now is going to go to Landon Knack, who we've discussed several times throughout the year that he's capable of, he raises the floor, if you will, and is another solid contributor for the Dodgers. And so, yeah, as you said, if they can kind of survive this final month and get healthy, the NL West race really shouldn't be a race anymore. And I think, looking at the MLB standings right now, the bigger picture to look at this point are the Phillies and the Brewers. Phillies are 1.5 games back. Brewers are only 2 games back, which I hadn't realized until I double checked everything before we hopped on. And so, yeah, I think that is where the attention, you don't take it for granted, but the attention probably shifts a little bit to those teams as opposed to inside your division.
Yeah, I think so. I think that this series went a long way in sort of creating that cushion. And so, the focus is going to be, it's not as critical, I don't think, in all honesty, that they do end up with the 1 seed. It helps. Like, I'm not saying that, they should not care about it and not go at it, but I think it's a little less, I think it's a little less important, obviously, than making sure that they win their own division. But like I said, I think this team is better equipped than just about anybody in the league to continue playing strong baseball, to continue making a run. And if they do that, I do think they'll end up with the top seed in the NL. Brewers have been hot, so maybe that doesn't last for the next 4 weeks, like the way they've been playing. And Philadelphia's a good team. But it's even if they don't end up with it, it could all be moot if one of those other teams, whoever beats them out, let's say, ends up losing, they know we can see them. So that's why I think the division race and getting that cushion is so much more important. But yeah, I mean, such a positive vibe series too. And I think the one of the bigger takeaways from it too is they really showed that they can grind out some wins. It helps when you have the offense that they do, but they didn't get great pitching the entire series, and they were still able to show some fight there and pull out a couple of those wins. The Kershaw getting hurt, in the second inning, like all of that stuff, like the bullpen showed some heart, the lineup showed a lot of heart, and then we're a little closer to 50-50 too.
Yeah. And we're going to get into Ohtani and what he continues to do. 3 more stolen bases today in the series finale. Real quick, I'm seeing Felipe. Thank you. I appreciate you liking the new camera setup. Unfortunately, this is only temporary. I am out of town. I will be back in. I saw your follow-up comment joking that it looks like I moved out of the basement, which, hey, like, I'm proud of my setup at home with the bobbleheads behind me and all that. So not Jeff Spiegel. He misses the Iron Man fist. I'm happy to report it has not gone anywhere. It is just at home, and I am not currently home, but it was important for us to keep our content rolling for you guys. Lucas, I apologize for not getting to your super chat sooner. He says he went to Saturday's game. It was wild, 50-50. He's saying no, 50-60 for Ohtani. That I'm going to be honest, that thought, maybe not 60, but I think 50-50 is pretty much a lock at this point. And 50-55, in terms of stolen bases, I think we're sort of looking at. He got 3 today kind of with ease, and he keeps stealing. And most importantly, like you mentioned in our show the other night, not getting caught. And so, that's been an important factor. But where do you see, obviously there's been a lot of focus on 45-45, which is a given at this point, 50-50, not a full guarantee, but almost there. Yeah. Where do you see maybe Ohtani's numbers kind of finally settling in?
I'm still not sold, and I'm playing, maybe this is me like playing it safe in my heart to not get ahead of myself, but he's on track. He's on track, and I just hope that he doesn't slow down at all. Because I think the home run part might come right up. It could come right up to the end.
I agree.
And so, I know he just had a 10 homer month, but that's not typical, even for a guy like him. So, I'm hoping, very optimistic, but not letting myself be a full believer yet and saying like it's a done deal. But the stolen bases part is, I think what is really impressive, like you mentioned, is just him not getting caught. And I think he's got 23 in a row or something like that. And there's a threshold of like diminishing returns on stolen bases. Like, I want to say the math says you have to be successful like 80% of the time for it to actually tip to like it's more positive than good. Like if you still 7 out of 10, the numbers sort of go the other way, and it says like, okay, you're actually hurting the team, versus helping it if you get caught that often. And so that has been incredibly impressive. And he's in a situation now where he's like a legitimate base stealer. And so when he gets on, teams know he's looking to run, and he's still not getting caught. It's just it really is impressive. He's like he's like a traditional base stealer, right? Like he's one of those kinds of guys at this point where he's going to go and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Aaron says it would be amazing for Shohei to do 50-50 in Anaheim. I agree, because that would mean he hits an absurd number of home runs over a 2-game span. So Aaron, I like where you're thinking, and that certainly would be great for the storyline and all that. But unfortunately, I don't see 50-50 coming in these next 2 games. Before we, we'll get to Ohtani and some of the stuff he's doing. Thank you again, Lucas, for that super chat. I want to highlight Freddie Freeman a bit, because obviously he's been dealing with a lot on the personal side with his family. Fortunately, things are trending up for Max, and he's been recovering at home. And that was, Freddie felt comfortable enough coming back to the Dodgers, hit well, and then had the hairline fracture in his finger and completely struggled. And understandably so. That's not a criticism of him. I think, any batter, any hitter, any player is going to struggle with that type of injury. Got the break. The Dodgers had the off day. They sat him out the entire Orioles series, which I think made sense heading into this weekend. It looks like it's completely paid off. He hit 4 home runs in 3 games, hit 2 home runs today. Is this, kind of the banner says on our screen, is Freddie Freeman back? Is he, kind of back on track, if you will?
Yeah, it certainly looks like it. He hit that ball the other way and snuck it over. That was a shot. It was kind of on a line a little bit, and he hit it to that opposite corner. That was just a really impressive swing. And I think that when he goes really well, he really looks to sort of pepper that left side of the field. Yeah. And for him to show some power that way, I think is evidence that he's feeling good. So yeah, I would call him back.
And I think, the home runs are great, but also he had the sacrifice fly too. So great situational hitting from him. How important is he to kind of the Dodgers? Like Ohtani's doing what he's doing. Yeah. Mookie, I think it might be fair to say he can be a little streaky at times. Sure. How important then is Freeman? Like, is he overlooked, do you think, in some sense with respect to the Dodgers lineup?
I don't know that he's overlooked. I think that he gets overshadowed.
I think probably a better way of putting it.
Is a good way to look at it, because Ohtani is Ohtani. He's chasing 50-50 and an MVP. Mookie Betts, until he got hurt, was in that running as well. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was easy to overlook Freddie and what he's been able to do. Plus, he got out of the gates a little slow this season, at least especially in comparison to the other 2 guys ahead of him. So yeah, I think when he's going so well, like, it really it makes this lineup so tough. I think he's one of those connectors, and that's crazy to say about a guy who's won an MVP award recently, and is one of the best hitters in the league. But he really is a connector piece for this lineup, because it's so deep, and for him to, when you're a pitching staff and you're facing them, those first 3 guys are all uphill. Right? Like you have to beat them with your best stuff. And for him to not, the downhill doesn't start with Freddie Freeman basically anymore. It kind of did like early in the season when he was going through it a little bit, but he really creates like dangerous length in this lineup, right? Not like Miguel Rojas is another good connector. And then when he's going well, he makes this lineup deep, but not the same way Freddie does. Right? Like Freddie Freeman is deadly. Like Rojas is going to get a double every now and then, and he's going to kind of single you to death and put good at-bats together. Freeman is a guy, like, when he's right, is 35 kind of home run, ability. And so you put him in that lineup behind those 2 guys, and it really changes the complexion, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think the other thing with Freeman too is, as you said, as much as there's the ability to hit for power, he's also perfectly content in the right situation. We saw today the sacrifice fly, But if he's leading off an inning, if it's later in the game, he'll slap a single the other way to get himself on base and to start that rally. If it's an RBI situation, he'll come up with the sacrifice fly. He'll hit the home run. He'll hit the double. So yeah, I think praising him, like, yes, it's not to diminish him by any means in calling him a connector. I think it just speaks to kind of the overall hitter that he is. He's not somebody who's just gonna go up there and swing for power only, and he's somebody who openly has said that he subscribes to the theory of, a 300 batting average is a sign of a good hitter. And so I know the batting average number doesn't resonate with some people as much as it does with me, but he does look to hit 300 every single year. And, I don't know if he'll get there this season just because of he had a longer lull than we've been accustomed to, but that's a connector in the lineup. I like how you phrased that. Arguably maybe another connector, and this is super chat from not Jeff Spiegel. How do we feel? And considering the question, I'm going to have to wonder if this is maybe Jeff sneaking in here. He wants to know, how do we feel about the Will Smith extension now? This is obviously, I think, in reference to the can we call it a slump? I mean, it was a bad, 3 months, 4 months. So I'm not sure if it's a slump at that point, but a down season for Will Smith. He's turned it around a little bit in the desert out in Chase Field. His hand placement during his batting stance has kind of changed. Did you, I guess, before, kind of related to this question specifically, did you ever start to feel any differently towards the extension as he was struggling?
No, I didn't. And he's gotten so much better defensively too. Like that is going to play a part in how we value this extension as well. And also, like, let's say he ends up just with the down year, the slash line and all that stuff end up looking not as great as he has been in the past. And 2025 can be a kind of a bounce back season for him and great. But he's still providing like pretty good value on that when that deal kicks in, because he went for the security versus, like, and this is hard to say because he just got a 9-figure contract, right? But like, he went for the security over like the huge, massive payday potential. And if he plays like normal Will Smith has been like the last few seasons, that contract becomes like one of the better bargains in baseball. Probably you have an all-star slugging catcher making what the AAV is on that. And I forgot what the exact number is, but that ends up being a value. And whenever you're spending as much money as the Dodgers spend and you can find a value contract that way, it's huge, because it allows you to then go out and do things like maybe sign Teoscar Hernandez.
Yeah. To the super chat that we got, which again, thank you, not Jeff Spiegel. I don't remember seeing a whole lot of Will Smith contract extension references as he was struggling. There were a few here and there, but it definitely wasn't something that I was overly concerned about. It didn't really cross my mind, other than I thought like the timing was ironic. Like, oh, they just signed into this big extension, which was certainly warranted, and like you said, a great kind of a team friendly deal. And then he went into this season just he had that really long skid, and I thought, man, like, that was just kind of unfortunate timing. I'm sure the Dodgers don't have any regret, even if Will Smith didn't necessarily have this signs of the turnaround. I know Jeff brought it up on one of the shows the past couple of weeks. He's been hitting the ball really hard and making great contact and just wasn't getting rewarded. Like, the Dodgers weren't going to regret that contract, because we've seen them say it time and time again. Like, they bet on the back of the baseball card of these players, and they know these guys. And so nobody is perfect. Down seasons do happen. Bad stretches happen. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. And I even, as we're discussing this, I'm seeing the chat, like, nobody's saying that, yeah, they shouldn't have signed him to that contract. So I get the sentiment, but I think, at least for Anthony and I, and it seems like a lot of people, that there wasn't much feeling towards that deal.
Yeah. I wonder how long he is a full-time catcher. Like, I do wonder that, like, given the length of the contract, I'd be curious to see where the front office views him long-term. Because I would guess it might not be behind the plate the entire time.
Yeah, I can't imagine that either. And it'll be interesting. I mean, maybe not that I'm trying to retire Freddie Freeman. We just got done raving about his ability as a hitter, but yeah, he's certainly closer to the end of his career than the beginning. And so I wonder if as he maybe starts to sort of phase out, does Will Smith go to first base? We've seen them try third base a little bit, although I don't know how much that'll necessarily play out. So yeah, we'll have to see. And to your point, if he's moved off of everyday catcher, then maybe it ends up boosting his offensive production, or at least helping maybe sustain the higher level.
I think that's what the move would be about, versus like him not being a capable defensive catcher, because he's turning himself into a really good defensive catcher and a guy who can control the run game. And so I think, and that, that may keep him behind the plate a little longer. Maybe there's a couple extra seasons that they get out of him behind the plate as a full-time catcher. But I think long-term, when they do talk about moving him eventually off of that position, it's going to be so that way they can keep the bat fresh.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, his defensive improvements certainly shouldn't be overlooked. And I think he's even also made strides in, pitch calling and developing that rapport with the entire pitching staff, and gaining more and more of their trust. Not that they necessarily doubted him, but developing those relationships. That's not stuff that happens overnight.
Sure.
All right. We have another super chat from Larry. He wants to know who can bench press more between Dustin May and Justin Robleski. I don't necessarily have an answer for this. I'm not sure. I'm not even going to guess over who may do it. I hope Dustin May makes a full recovery, and I hope Justin Robleski, isn't too discouraged by some of the rough outings he's had as his, rookie season debuting. Anthony, I don't know. Do you want to try and take any sort of stab at that?
Dustin May looks like wiry strong, right? Like the skinny guys who are like, you arm wrestle them or whatever. You play basketball against them, and you're like, whoa, this guy might be skinny, but he's strong. That might be Dustin May. He kind of has that sort of frame that like makes me. He has wide shoulders, right? Even though he's skinny, that he's kind of broad. I don't know. I think he may be stronger than we think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Larry, thank you for the super chat. Sorry, we don't have a more specific answer for you. And thank you for all the other super chats. I do see some questions coming up in the chat. Just a reminder, we will leave some time at the end to answer those. If you want to make sure we address a certain topic or answer a specific question, even if it comes to bench pressing, super chat guarantees that we will do that. We'll throw it up on the screen, which I'm sure all you guys are certainly aware of, as most of you have been here with us for quite some time. Let's get back to some of the Ohtani stuff really quick. He's already made an MLB history by becoming the first player this season with 43-43. I know, 45-45 was kind of the number people were pointing to, and then 50-50 and stuff like that. So now, every home run, every stolen base is basically a new MLB record.
Yeah.
We saw 3 stolen bases today. I don't know, that ran his total up for, I should have double checked this before we hopped on here. His total during the series was 4 or 5, I think. Do you happen to have?
He had 3 today. He had 2 the other day. I don't think he had any in the first game. Because I think we were saying like he was on first a couple of times, and we were like go, and he never went.
Yeah.
So I think he had 5 this series.
Okay.
My math might be wrong, but I'm just going based off memory.
I think that is right. At the very least, I know that he has 44 home runs, 46 stolen bases this season.
Yeah. We know those numbers.
I mean, is there, we've discussed Ohtani a lot, and we've asked this question before, but at some point, are you not necessarily amazed? Like, he just keeps kind of impressing with his ability? I mean, I think the biggest thing, maybe the better way to put this is, what has been maybe the most impressive with Ohtani's season so far?
I think we talked about I talked about one of the things that's impressed me so much, and that's his the stolen base total with, I think he's gotten caught like 4 times or something like that. Like that, to me, I didn't know that, like that Shaq meme, like, I owe you an apology. I wasn't familiar with your game. I wasn't familiar with that part of Ohtani's game, at least it being that lethal. But I think what's impressed me most, that we've gotten almost a full season to watch him, because nobody wants to watch the Angels. So, you didn't really get to see a whole lot of him. But his consistency is like really impressive. Like, even when he was going through a little bit of a skid, he's had a couple of the valleys this season. Even then, like, he's still hitting the ball hard. And so that consistency has been really impressive to watch all season. And also some of the balls that he gets to with the barrel of the bat to hit for, it hits him over 100 miles an hour, hits some of them out of the park. That plate coverage has been very impressive to watch. Like he's taking pitches, he has that swing right where he sort of dives, a little Ichiro in him. And he's getting to balls that are down and away, and he's hitting them hard. Like that's very impressive.
Yeah. I think what I have been probably most impressed, like I knew he was fast. Like one of the things with Ohtani was he has all that power, and then he has very good speed for a player his size. To your point, I didn't watch him every day when he was playing with the Angels.
Yeah.
So to now see him and just how fast he is, like I did not expect this. Like I would not have predicted a 40-40 season by any means. I would have thought, maybe he gets to like 30, 35 stolen bases. Didn't see 40-40. Definitely didn't see, something like 50-50.
Yeah.
As we mentioned earlier, I could see him running his stolen base total up to, 55 to 60. So I've been thoroughly impressed by that. I do wonder how much of it has been a little bit of a byproduct of moving into the leadoff spot. I'm not sure if he would be doing this much running if he was batting second. But yeah, I mean, can't say enough. I know we said it over the weekend. The MVP race should be over by this point, and if it is or isn't, I think by the time voting does happen, it probably will be.
Yeah, I hope so. I think another thing with him too is like, he signs that contract. It's a record deal, and the haters come out and go, no player is worth that. And Dodger fans are obviously very excited about it. He had a couple of similar offers on the table that he turned down. And to get that kind of deal, have those expectations, not just from Dodger fans, but from like baseball and the sports world, the casual sports world as well, because $700 million for 10 years, and then the deferrals, and then the gambling stuff that all happened, like, all of this stuff. And then playing in LA with these expectations on a team that has World Series or bust sort of, vibes. And for him to come out and do what he's doing and probably be the NL MVP, very impressive again. Like the guy's ability to live up to the hype in a place like Los Angeles. Wow. And I know he's played in Southern California, but playing for the Angels is not like playing for the Dodgers.
Yeah, no, not at all. Real quick, I want to look ahead to kind of the Angel series a little bit with Ohtani going back home, if you will. But this comment from Solon Style caught my attention. He says, Lindor is the Fangraphs war leader. If you want to be 100% confident, Ohtani needs to go on a run, and Lindor has to go on a slump, which Solon Style says they're both due for. Respectfully to Fangraphs and their war leaderboard, that's great and all. And I know that can be useful in determining player value and MVPs. Francisco Lindor, like again, Shohei Ohtani, I don't know how many other ways we can say in Solon Style. I'm not like speaking to you directly, just in general. Ohtani has literally accomplished something that no other player in MLB history has.
Yeah. And
that's with 1 month of the season still left to go. And Francisco Lindor, fine, having a great season. I know the MVP stuff, like more so in basketball, it becomes more of a conversation of, hey, like, can the MVP go to a player's if their team is, 8th in the playoff seeding or not making the playoffs, stuff like that. So I know the Mets have improved and have climbed back into the wild card picture. But I mean, I just don't see, Lindor, all due respect to him, kind of doing enough to take the MVP award away from Ohtani.
Yeah, and Fangraphs war leans a lot heavier. I shouldn't say a lot, but like they use a different defensive metric to account for the defensive side of that equation than Baseball Reference does. And that's all fine and good. And Lindor has become a really good defender as well. When the WAR numbers are that close, though, it's all within the margin of error. And so, like, I don't think that is I don't think that's a thing that can be used as a separator at this point when Ohtani and Lindor are that close, because again, margin of error is right there. It's a useful tool to try to gauge things. Like, if anything, we know that Lindor and Shohei Ohtani, based on WAR, are much better than anybody else in the National League, right? But when it comes to trying to separate them against each other, I think it's too close to really lean on either WAR equation. But like you said, I think the history part of this is really impressive. And if he gets to 50-50, like, really, really hard to not vote for that guy as the MVP, because not only did he do something that nobody's ever done, but he just absolutely shattered the previous record. And he's going to put up a season where I would say, like, Ronald Acuna is the only guy who could potentially chase that down at some point in his career right now. But other than that, like, none of these power hitters are going to go out and steal 50 bases, and none of the 50 stolen base guys are going to hit 50 homers. So it's one of those records that could stand for a while. So yeah, I think that the closer he gets to that number, the closer he is to locking up that award. And I would think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think here, Pinsanity, I think, put it a great way. Lindor's having an amazing year. Ohtani's having a historic year.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's well said. But, hey, maybe the Fangraphs war, the leaderboard will be something to pay attention to kind of over these next 2 weeks as Ohtani and Lindor kind of jostle, if you will.
Maybe later in the season, they'll let Ohtani play one game at first base, and then he won't make an error, and then he'll overtake Lindor in Fangraphs also.
Maybe that'll be leave it. Hey, if there's a front office that can figure that out, it would be the Dodgers that can plan something like that. All right, we had another super chat. This one's from Zip Code 0 saying Ohtani is worth the money even if he doesn't pitch, and I 100% agree, because to only pay $2 million a year for a player who's going to hit close to 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases, you're certainly getting a lot of ROI on that type of contract. And I know
absolutely. I mean, the if you wanted to put the number at 70 million, he's probably still worth it. At 2 million, it's just, give him a break, right? And like, for the deferrals, like, no big deal. Like, this is a franchise that's going to be printing money for a really long time, so they're going to be fine. And Ohtani's leaving money on the table doing that. He understands that, because when he is paid out that $68 million a year, in the future, it isn't $68 million anymore, right? Like, the actual value, it's gonna decrease. And so, he's been worth every penny, even if it was a full 70 million a year right now. I mean, he is, and they haven't made the entire thing back, but they're going to make that contract back probably 4 or 5 times over by the time he's done, with not just, game attendance and all of that stuff, but you figure the sponsorships, the things that they can do in Japan, all of that kind of stuff, is just adding numbers to the bank account for the Dodgers. And he's the reason why.
Yeah, I would venture to guess they have probably, and it sounds crazy because it's been less than 1 calendar year since he signed, obviously, but I would venture to guess they probably, and this is just me basing it off of all the different press releases we got from the Dodgers earlier this season of, hey, we have a new sponsorship with so-and-so, and then 1 week later, here's a sponsorship with so-and-so. I feel like they're probably at least 100 million, maybe even 200 million back, in revenue, and that, like, just all the different revenue streams that have been created, like you said, with Ohtani. And so, yeah, by the time, they'll get the 700 million back before his tenure, well before his, like you said, his tenure.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder, I don't know, because of their current TV deal. I don't know if they can do this, but like, a TV rights deal in Japan would not be out of the question, right? Like, to show Dodger games in Japan, like, I don't know what the rules are with that, or what the contract with their current TV deal states, in terms of being able to do something like that. But, if there's a way to do it, I'm sure they're looking into it, because that would add a whole bunch more to it.
Yeah, that's a great point. We have another super chat from Zip Code 0. It says, Mount Rushmore of LA sports is Kobe, Magic Johnson, Ohtani, Vin Scully. Then we're asked for who's on our Mount Rushmore. I don't know. So I can't put Ohtani on there yet. I think Kobe's definitely on there. I think Vince Scully's definitely on there. I think Magic Johnson can definitely, or has a very, 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 very good argument to be on there.
Yeah.
After that, it's kind of hard. Like, do you go like Jerry Buss? Do you go Chick Hearn? Like that, the fourth spot is tough. Do you have any four that stick out in your mind?
Kobe's a no-brainer. I would put Magic there because I think his very similar to Kobe, his overall impact on the city and the game of the NBA was, it was landscape changing, and so I think those two guys are on it for me. Vince Scully's a great call. It almost feels like if you go Vince Scully, like then Chick Hearn has a really, really good case.
Right.
I would say maybe Fernando Valenzuela.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Because it is LA, and I know he's not in the Hall of Fame, but and the organization took way too long to retire his number, but the impact he had on the Mexican community in a region of the country that is, heavily Mexican American and heavily Mexican. So I would put him there, and then probably Gretzky.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to put so industry to talk. Said Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, people are on it.
Brian Harrington said Wayne Gretzky. Rod agreed with you, Fernando Mania. Yeah, I know. Hopefully Blake, when he goes back and watches this and listens to it, he'll appreciate Anthony sticking up for one of his LA Kings legends. Blake is Blake's the big hockey guy in our staff. Yeah, that was a great question. Zip code 0. We appreciate it. Excuse me. Brandon, this has a super chat, says, is the playoff lineup Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Teoscar, Will Smith, Muncy, Gavin Lux, Tommy Edman, Miguel Rojas? That looks good to me. I think the only change, I mean, I guess, I don't know if you're asking this specific order. If so, I think the Dodgers would look to maintain kind of the left, right, left, right, left, right as much as possible. And so that would move, let's see, Lux up to 5th, which we've seen a lot during the regular season.
Or Muncy.
I think, yeah, if he really, maybe gets on fire. So that would be kind of the flip I make. And I think maybe Rojas ends up hitting 8th instead of Tommy Edman.
Yeah, I think they like Edman hitting 9th in front of Ohtani.
Yeah. So, Brandon, you definitely have the right players. If you had them in order, which I think you did based on Ohtani being listed ahead of Mookie and all that, those are kind of the changes that I think we would make. Super chat from Rod says, Baseball Savant ranks Ohtani the 151st fastest runner in baseball at 28.1 feet per second. Bobby Witt Jr. is the fastest at 30.5 feet per second. Yeah, I mean, what that tells me is there's not a huge difference between the fastest and being 151st. I mean, that's not a big gap. And again, I think, Bobby Witt Jr., we know his speed. Like he's got that. And he has some good pop for him as well. But I think my takeaway from here, again, is just like the speed that Ohtani has. And not only to be able to run fast, but to get a body of his size, his stature, moving that quickly to steal bases, because that's a different element than
he gets to top speed really quickly. He might not be the fastest guy. I mean, also considering how many baseball players there are in MLB, 150th is still pretty fast. Like he's a fast guy. But I think another impressive thing about him is like he gets to that top speed in like 3 steps. He's there.
Yeah. And that's like you said, it's impressive. And what I was saying, a player of his stature, because it's different, hitting a ball to the gap and legging out a double, you start to kind of gain speed. But to basically, do a sprint from first to second base, it's different.
From a stopped position. Yeah,
it's different base running. Thank you, everybody, for all these super chats. We have another one from Jeffrey. It says, analytics will work over the season. My concern is our over-reliance on it during the postseason, and we tend to go with numbers over what our eyes see. I believe players can play beyond themselves in the postseason. I know the analytics and feel debate, we got into it because of some of Dave Roberts' decision making during the Diamondback series. I get the concern with analytics. My stance is that analytics are fine if you factor it in. What I push back against and what bothers me is if decisions are only based on analytics, because what I believe is that with sport, like if that was the case, then robots would be playing sports and you would program them to however you want it to be, and that's who would win. There's human element, obviously, to all of this, and I don't think that can always be accounted for with some of the advanced analytics. I do think there's a world where they can both exist. I know there's a perception that you've kind of tried to push back and clarify that Dave Roberts is only analytics.
Yeah, I think that when you go back and look at it, and some of the blunders that Davis had, I think it's been more on the feel side versus like him making a mistake because he did something with the numbers, like because he keeps listening to the numbers basically. A lot of those blunders and those things that had everybody shouting, a lot of that was the feel stuff, leaving a guy in too long, going with a reliever at a time he shouldn't have or something like that. And I mean he's had great moments with it too. Kershaw coming out of the bullpen against the Nationals, all that kind of stuff also. But I think that again, if you make a move and there's evidence to say like this is the way to set somebody up for success, it's the optimum part, it's the optimum reasoning. It's you're setting a guy up not for failure but to be successful. It's really hard to argue against that. And if here's the thing, if a move like that doesn't work, people are going to complain about it no matter what the reasoning is. And I think for baseball, in all sports, but I think especially baseball, because it's played every day and there's 162 games, and because the postseason is such a sprint and it's sort of a different game than what you play from April through September, process is really, really important. And the results might not always be there, but that process becomes all the more critical because, again, over the course of 162 games, if you rely on the right process, you're going to get the best outcomes long term. But again, October is different. And so there are arguments to be made there because then you don't get to see those benefits long term because it is such a short amount of time. So I probably already got too far into the weeds than I wanted to with that answer, but like, I really do like to explain these things because like the whole analytics versus feels debate, I think it can get a little silly and it can go off the rails quickly.
Yeah, I think so. And that's I'll go out on a hunch and say that's probably not the final time we discuss or try to find a balance with analytics and how the Dodgers sort of approach things this year. All right, let's open it up to some questions for a few minutes. We have a few minutes left. Just a reminder, if you could start it with the word question in all caps, that helps us pick it out as we're scrolling through. As we wait for those to populate, Anthony, let's have the people sort of bear with us. USC and LSU played a football game on Sunday night. You may have heard about it. I knew USC had it the entire way, but on your scale of how nervous you may have been from 0 to 10, what number are you giving me?
I was probably like a 7. Yeah. I think I was probably like a 7. They looked for the first game of the season, they looked pretty good and they did it against a quality opponent. That catch in the first half, that's just, I mean, wow. And if you didn't watch the game, go look it up on social media. Basically just Google or go onto Twitter and say the catch USC, search that, it'll come right up for you. It was incredible. But yeah, that's the kind of game you got to come out of the blocks and win if you're going to have championship aspirations, right? So good for them. I'm glad they did it, and you got to witness it.
Yeah, it was. I tried to put on a poker face there, but I was definitely concerned. I was gaining confidence as like LSU didn't necessarily pull away early because SC wasn't playing all that great.
Sure, yeah.
And then as it was setting up and it looked like SC was going to be able to score right before the half, and then they were going to get the ball in the second half. I thought, okay, here's your chance. Of course, they missed the field goal, and that's when I started to get worried again. But yeah, anyway, we'll digress. We appreciate everybody for for staying patient with us as we waited for some questions to come in here. This is a good first one. Dwayne Sanchez fan, already looking ahead to the playoffs, wants to know biggest homer this October by a guy who isn't in the big three or Teoscar Hernandez.
Miggy Rowe.
Ooh, going way down the lineup. That's a good choice. I'm torn between, I want to say Gavin Lux, just because I think he would be great for kind of the storyline in his season.
Yeah.
I think an easier choice is Max Muncy because he's more of a power hitter and he's been there before. But yeah, that's who I pick between. I'll stick with Lux. I'll leave it at that.
Good.
Rod wants to know why not bring, he's calling Alex Stressia back out today. Look, the bullpen has been gassed. And so if they can kind of use a guy without having to push him a little bit more, that's just kind of the state that they're in right now.
Yeah. Yeah. The guys that they lean on heavily, seems like this is a time right now where they're really trying to get them as much rest as they can. Especially after that, the game that Kershaw started in this series. So I think they're looking for every opportunity to not give guys the ball as much as they have been. That'll change obviously soon, but I think it seems like they're in a window here where they think that they can get away with some things. So yeah, those guys are going to need breathers, to be at their best in October. So they're going to spend, I think, the rest of this month looking for those windows.
Yeah. Javier wants to know if Landon Knack will be replacing Clayton Kershaw in the starting rotation while Kershaw's on the injured list. That hasn't been set yet, but as Anthony and I kind of mentioned and agreed on earlier in our show, I think that's probably going to be the likely play. Craig is saying, not 100% sure, but he's asking about records starting out a game with consecutive home runs. The Dodgers, I know, made I think it was MLB history, right? Or at the very least, franchise history with their 3 in a row.
For sure, yeah.
So if that's not MLB history, it would have to be close to it. So if it's not, then that means MLB history somehow, some team, some group of players started a game with 4 home runs in a row, which would be pretty impressive because doing it 3 times is pretty remarkable. Anthony, kind of piggybacking off you picking Miguel Rojas, Rod wants to know how high up on the MVP of the Dodgers list would you put Miggy Rowe?
That's a good question. I like that. He's top 5 for sure, and I'm debating if I would put him in the top 3. He's really saved their behinds. Not just with the defense, because we knew that's what he was. That's what he's there for. But the fact that he's not an automatic out in the lineup like he had been before, huge. I mean, and it's allowed them to do a whole bunch of different things now. It's allowed them to put Edman in center field. It's allowed them to put Mookie back in right field. It's allowed them to stick with Gavin Lux for as long as they did during that rough patch. He's you talk about connector pieces. The fact that he's producing on both sides has really allowed the Dodgers a lot of flexibility in other areas. So, the more I think I just talked myself into the fact that he's a top 3 guy in terms of team MVP.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I was going to say. Because I mean, obviously, arguably, Ohtani's probably first just from sheer production.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then after that, Gavin Stone, I think, has an argument to be second. He's the only starter who's not gone on the injured list, and I know he went through his struggles, but he's bounced back. And then I think, if it's not Rojas, maybe Gavin Lux, but Gavin Lux also was, kind of slow out of the gate. And had Gavin not turned things around, the Dodgers had a pretty good fallback option in Mookie Betts at second base, but that is only possible because of, like you said, the season Miguel Rojas is having. So I do think he's definitely top 3. Let's see here. Scooter says, with Ohtani's 50 stolen bases seems to be the case of being done soon. When would you predict he gets to 50 home runs? Let's see. He's 6 away. I think in about 2 weeks he could get there, but probably not necessarily any quicker than that.
I would say, I would say by September 20th, I think.
It's a good 2
a week here, starting today, basically.
That works. TQT says Kershaw going on the IL is a blessing in disguise. The front office may not be forced to put him on the playoff roster now. Do you think the injury eliminates him from the playoff roster?
At least for the first round, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if he is back after, the minimum 15 days and can make a couple starts, then I think he's going to be on the playoff roster. If he's healthy, to me, he's on the playoff roster.
I would agree. Yeah,
so
I don't think they're going to leave him off if he's able to pitch. Maybe if you gave them truth serum and tied him up, would they tell you like, yeah, we kind of hope this might linger a little so we don't have to make that call? Very possible. But I'm with you. I think if he's healthy enough and he can come back and make a couple of starts before the end of the season, he's probably on the postseason roster.
Yeah. So
unless he gets shelled, if he gets shelled, and then everybody, this you also need everybody else healthy. You need Glass now there, you need Flaherty there, you need Yamamoto there, and I think if those three guys are there, Kershaw's chances of making it go way, way down.
Yeah, I think if he does struggle after coming back, it would be, oh, actually, he's still kind of hurt, or it's bothering him again. It would be that. It would be that discussion.
They wouldn't be like, yeah, his performance just wasn't there. They would be like, it's still bothering him for sure.
Yeah. Don Kim, I appreciate this references. There's no such thing as true serum, and he's quoting Ant-Man. As a Marvel fan, I get that. That was funny. All right. I mean, if we'll answer a couple more if you guys have them. I'm not really seeing a whole lot. Well, I'll give you guys a couple more minutes, but to kind of TQT, what I was going to say is, we're not trying to necessarily sidestep answering that. I think, you did ask, does the injury prevent him from making the playoff roster? It's hard to say right now because I don't think we know the full severity of it. I know Dave Roberts did tell reporters today that Kershaw is going to be in a walking boot to kind of help alleviate some of the pressure as he deals with inflammation in the toe. So, if that injury lingers for 3 weeks, he may not be. It may make it to a point where they say like that's too much time missed. Although theoretically he could keep his arm moving by playing catch on flat ground, I would guess. But yeah, that could be interesting to sort of watch. All right, here maybe this will be the last one. Rod wants to know, where is Outman? Is he done for the season? Outman is in AAA Oklahoma City, which, by the way, congratulations to him and his wife. They just had a child. Yeah, I mean, Outman's not a candidate to get called up this year, I think, unless the Dodgers have, multiple injuries in the outfield, and then that can kind of change things.
Yeah, they're kind of set right now.
We got another Zip Code Zero. You've been active in the super chats. We appreciate you. Do we have a go-to playoff closer? I mean, I think Kopech could be the guy, but they just may not necessarily say it.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna ever this season name somebody. And it's working for them so far. I think everybody sort of understands that the roles are a little bit fluid at the back of the bullpen. So he's probably the guy who gets the first look. Like I should say he's like first option, and it's going to depend on like where they might have to use Evan Phillips in any particular game. All of that kind of stuff will factor in, but I think he's the guy who they would look at first.
Yeah, I agree. All right, here, we'll make this the last one. Alex DeGuire says, if the Dodgers lock up division race, quote, early, do they start resting guys more or keep them in and try to stay hot? I think there'll be a little bit of both, which is the approach that, honestly, they take every season. Every time they've been up by 10 games or whatever, or 8 games in the NL West, or have clinched, by the middle of September, there is the balance. What makes it also harder to do this now is that the expanded rosters in September are only 2 additional players, and that's 1 pitcher, 1 position player. It's not like before when you could call up 40 guys and if you want to rest half of your position players for any given game, you could do it. So that sort of eliminates kind of the resting aspect. But I think, they have their approach of, hey, we try to win games while also maintaining and prioritizing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Starts in April, runs all the way through the end of the regular season. So I wouldn't expect that to change at all. All right. I think that's going to do it for us tonight. We appreciate all of you guys spending your Labor Day night in here with us. I hope you all had a nice holiday, some good barbecue food. That's Anthony ended up being a pretty productive series. I jokingly said you and I would be back on here after the Dodgers swept. I was one game off, but hey, taking 3 of 4 certainly was still impressive and arguably much needed. As we mentioned earlier, the Dodgers now have the tiebreaker over the Diamondbacks. They're 5 games up in the division, not over the Diamondbacks, but over the Padres, who suddenly are in second place now. Diamondbacks are 6 games back. And like Anthony and I were discussing earlier tonight, the bigger picture, or the bigger thing to maybe keep track of now, is the best record in the National League. Phillies are a game and a half back. Brewers are only 2 games back. Dodgers are heading to Anaheim next. Blake and Scott are going to be live with you guys after Tuesday night's game. Then I believe it's myself and Daniel on Wednesday night, and we'll keep with our schedule throughout the rest of the week. We've been shifting some people around as schedules sort of permitted. We appreciate everybody for sticking with us and keeping tuning in every single night. Once again, that's Anthony. I'm Matthew, and we'll see you next time.